Want to know how you can do better turns surfing whilst you're at home? This video will do exactly that, so let's get into it. Hello, it's Lita from Kinetic Ability. Welcome back to another episode in our Surf Fit series. If you're new here, welcome to the channel and welcome back to those new subscribers. Any links mentioned in the video can be found in the description box, which is just down below. And let's jump into it. So hopefully you've been following along with the series, and if you haven't, I would recommend you go back and check out some of the past episodes. Otherwise, certain things in this episode probably won't make much sense. Last week we looked at the surfing pop-up, and this week we're going to look at the turn. So we're going to break down right now the different movement patterns, what exercises you can do on land to help you when you get back in the water, and lastly some bonus tips near the end. So let's jump into it. If you do want to just jump straight to the practical session, then I will leave the time on screen, but right now we're going to jump into the theory side of things. So let's go. So it is an oversimplified version, but obviously you can appreciate it's quite complex what's happening. But during a full turn, the body is going through a combination of flexion, extension, rotation, at various joints at different times. So right now we're going to split the screen. On the left is going to be the anatomy app, and on the right is going to be a real life example. And we're going to go through each part of the movement and try to break it down, so you can understand why you're doing what exercises and why that's going to help you. So let's take an example of a bottom to tap turn and a regular stance. We're going to start from the bottom and work our way up. Your foot needs good dorsiflexion, needs good pronation and supination. Moving on to the hip and the leg, you need good internal rotation of that back leg, flexion and adduction. So there's going to be something else going on at the front leg. Your torso needs good flexion, rotation, as well as side flexion. Again, depending which side of the body you look at, there will be opposing things happening. Moving on to the arm. So the arm is going to go behind you and you're going to turn your palm out. So your lats, your external rotators, your rotator cuff are going to be firing, posterior deltoid. And then moving on to, obviously when you come to the top of the turn, your arm is going to go up and over. So you've got your posterior deltoid, you're going to have your pecs, you're going to have your upper traps involved, and then your lats are going to help to bring that arm back down. Lastly, your head is obviously going to turn as you turn. So you've got your SCM and your scalenes will be involved as well, providing some side flexion. As you can see here, when the surfer drives out of his top turn, which we didn't analyze, he is very extended, okay? So everything's going to want to extend, so that's going to be very posterior chain dominant, using his glutes, his hamstrings, spinal erectors. He might not be the best surfer to have used for this example, as his arm swing doesn't really go up and over, but there you go. If none of that made any sense to you, as always, I recommend you go back and watch the first 2 episodes to understand all these things. So as you can see, it's pretty complex stuff. There is a lot going on, a lot of different muscles are being used. There will be a lot going on in terms of muscle switching from being stabilizers to becoming primary movers, secondary movers. Again, that's not the focus of this episode, so if you are interested in the more anatomy side of things, I will leave a link in the description. So let's get stuck into the practical. So as you can see, I have split the practical session up into a warm-up and then different components depending on what equipment you have. So I thought this might be useful because obviously not everyone has got a lot of equipment. So you've got your bodyweight exercises, kettlebell/dumbbell, banded, and finally ball exercises. So I hope that makes things easier for you guys. So we're going to get started with a warm-up. So I'm going to lunge forward and just twist from side to side. And you want to be doing this a couple of times each side. I always say go for 5. After I finished my side to side rotations, I am going to go into my inchworm and knee twist. So reaching down, walk your hands forward. When you get into a plank position, bring your opposite knee to reach your opposite elbow. Then as you come back up into a squat, and then just repeating that process a couple of times, again, until you start to feel the blood going. I aim for around 5. It seems to be a good number that works for me. Then I'm going to move into bridge with a rotation. Okay, so it's important to warm up the hips, get the synovial fluid moving in the capsule. So I'm just pushing as hard as I can through my arms and through that foot that's on the ground, whilst keeping my hips level. I am twisting my foot out to the side. Okay, so you will feel this very strongly in your bum, as well as probably your core if you are stabilizing. So same thing on the other side. Again, go for about 5 rotations, or you can go up and down if that's too advanced. Then moving into some seated hip swivels. So again, a couple of rotations per side. And then moving into scorpion kicks. So again, just doing a few each side. You can start by just doing a very small movement, moving into a bigger one. I'm gonna hit the fence, yep. You can also add little pauses in, whatever kind of feels good for you. And then moving on to what I like to call log rolls. So you're gonna go into kind of a position like I'm showing, and you're gonna try and roll onto your side, and then stop yourself, and don't let your feet or your hands touch the floor, and roll back into that middle position. These are quite tough. Adding in some rotations, just driving the elbows from left to right, let that hip rotate as well. Then touching your mid shin or your toes, again, just getting that upper back ready to go. The first one's going to be mountain climbers, our body weight exercise. So again, reaching the opposite knee to the opposite elbow. You can do that side plank twist that I showed you last week. So again, you can do it for reps, you can do it for holds. Just make sure that you do a variation which is correct for you. Then I'm going to show you some jumps. So you can do 180 jumps, you can do 90-degree jumps, or you can do 360 jumps, okay? So try and spot that landing. As you can see, when I go that direction, I don't have the best landing in the world. And then when I go the other way, I'm going to add some pre-swings with my arms, and my landing is much better. So again, doing that for reps. Then you've got your toe touches, okay? So you can touch your ankle, you can touch your toe, depending on what you want to, well, where you are, you can make it more difficult for yourself. Again, doing this either for time or for reps. So you could do it for 20 seconds on, 20 seconds off, that kind of a thing. Moving on now to the rolls. Again, moving on to the rolls. So I do use these in my core routine. Again, stopping yourself when you reach to the side. You can also roll fully onto the front and then reverse the process. So these are really going to get those obliques firing. And you can see it from the front view. So you really have to decelerate your body, which is going to help you as well a bit with your spatial awareness. So when you're going to reach for that turn. Here I'm doing some shin box get-ups, okay, just simply sitting in that position. And I'm going to use my arms from that back foot twisting up. You can also stand up into a squat, bring that foot back behind and twist back down, and now the other leg will be down. And then you can advance it again into when I step up. Going into that squat, bring that other foot behind, twist round, and then sitting back down again. So that's going to work the hip rotation with your core rotation, which is essentially what we do in surfing. Moving on to kettlebells, this is your alternating kettlebell swing. So you can see I'm hinging from the hips, my back is staying straight, and the rotation is just coming from me pressing my hips forward. Then I'm going to move on to some around the world, so just passing the kettlebell from one hand to the other. You can go clockwise, anti-clockwise. Again, doing it for reps or time. Then I'm going to switch into a windmill. So again, you saw this exercise in the last episode. It's a great one for integrating that core with the hip and the upper body. Again, doing it for reps. Here I'm going to do low to high rotation, okay? So most of the rotation is coming from my back leg, okay? So when I'm down at the bottom, it's coming from that right leg, and when I rotate up to the top, it's coming from the left. This is called a pass under. Now, I will say my hip should have been a bit lower on this one, but I was a bit squished for space. Anyway, you just simply drag the kettlebell from one side to the other. So this is going to be your get up. So if you don't know what this is, I would recommend that you research it a bit more, as you need to be quite coordinated, but I'm sure that you can just follow along. So here's a view from the front. So it's just a lunge, kind of like that windmill position. You bring the leg through and you're slowly going down on your elbow. I don't know what these are called, but you're just simply bringing your feet to the left and right of a kettlebell, what you're holding up. Moving on to some banded stuff. So this is a pull-off press isometric hold. I'm showing you from the side. You can do high to low cable chops. You can do low to high, but I don't have an anchor. So again, working that top and bottom turn. And here you've got front facing rotation pulls. Again, gonna get those obliques, gonna help you get stronger in your rotation. If you have a ball, you can do alternating left to right ball slams. I can't slam it very hard because my neighbors will hate me. So here I'm showing you half kneeling, again ball toss. So I'm going to show you a slightly different variation where I try to release with my hands or I push with my hand. Okay, so there's two very different things going on there. And I can alternate which leg I use. It's going to replicate more a top turn or a bottom turn. You can do a tall kneeling, left to right rotation. You can do bottom to top, again just controlling that deceleration of the ball. And you can also do this one standing, so going from that bottom to kind of over the shoulder. Just imagine you're throwing it and stop it and coming back around. Make sure you let that hip rotate. So how do you program this into your routine? This is not a simple answer, as everything, it does depend on what you are doing. So if you're doing the body weight exercises, that is probably not going to be enough of a stimulus for you to train it as power. Maybe for the jumps it will. It does depend on your fitness levels, etc. Compared to something like if you're using a medicine ball, which is maybe 8 kilos, if you're doing the tosses, you're going to have to obviously take rest because you're exerting maximal power at high loads. So you will have to take the appropriate rest intervals. So yeah, it's not a one size fits all question. If you're just doing like the lower weight stuff, you could probably just whack it into your core routine and do something like 3 sets of 10 each side or 3 sets of 20. They should be strong in terms of endurance, but you also want to have good power behind those muscles. But I appreciate that we're probably without equipment or without adequate weight at this time during the COVID-19 lockdown. So you kind of just have to do with whatever you have and go from there. So again, turning is obviously a skill, it's a technique. So again, we're trying to hit those bottom 2 tiers of the performance pyramid. So make sure that, you know, you are up to scratch in your technique. So you might need to go and get some surf coaching, for example, or you might need more practice in your skill. So you can do that as well by doing things like surf skate training sessions. They're great to get more time. So yeah, just a point to mention about all of these episodes, the purpose is not to have a quick fix. Doing this once is not going to make you a better surfer. Getting that upper body strength, for example, it just takes time to do it for at least a training block, if not more. So a training block is about 4 to 6 weeks, and you might need to repeat those training blocks to get more, for example, strength. So if you're trying to build strength, it takes about 2 weeks to get a neural adaptation, and it takes about 4 to 6 weeks to get an actual increase in muscle size. So you have to be willing to dedicate, be patient, stay diligent and work at it. I'm afraid you just can't rush physiology and you have to put the work in. It's just simple as that. And if you do, you will reap what you sow. So that brings me near the end of the topic. And as promised, here are your bonus tips. So for the bonus tips, we're going to look at some soft tissue work with a tennis ball. So I'm putting a tennis ball into my left glute, sitting on it and using my arms and opposite leg to help take off some of my body weight. I am then going to bend and straighten my knee to get deeper into this. Do that a couple of times, and then the glutes also help to rotate the hips. So I'm going to move my leg from left to right, again adjusting the other leg position to help offload some weight or to put more weight on to get deeper. So whichever one's right for you, it's not a competition. Jokes, it's always a competition. Then just moving the ball and finding a new spot and repeating that over again. So next I'm going to work more on the outside of my hip, my lateral hip, so my abductors and some more rotators. Simply lying on the side of the ball, find the fleshy part of your hip, using that left arm to take off some of the weight. And if I feel comfortable enough, try and lift that bottom leg up. So this is going to intensify the feeling. So only do it if you are ready. Again, make sure you repeat this on both sides. So next I'm going to work on the TFL, which sits on the front of the hip. So rolling onto my front, just down and off the hip bone, and I'm going to move my leg from left to right. I can also move it down and up. So this muscle helps to flex the hip and also to internally rotate. So it can get a bit tight when we do a lot of rotation. So it's just nice to have that temporary relief from the ball. So I'm going to work on my lats and external rotators, placing it just under the crease where your armpit is and more off to the back, rolling on your side and using the opposite leg to take off some of the weight and rotating my arm to get a deeper stretch. And that's it. You can apply this to all parts of the body. So that brings me to the end of episode 5. In the next series, we're going to be breaking down surfing airs and what exercises you can do on land to help you when you're in the water. Thank you for watching as always, and I hope that you learned something useful and that you can apply this information to help better yourself. If you did enjoy this episode, I'd massively appreciate if you could hit that thumbs up button, share and subscribe, and that would really help me out. So thanks for tuning in and see you in the next episode.